Good morning. Today is January the 16th, 2026. It is about 10:26 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And for the record, I'm Yahweh Elohim, Yahuwah, Joshua, and we are going to talk about an array of subjects. I will try to get this done within about an hour and a half. I have a hard stop at 12:30, and then of course I do not do videos on Saturday and Sunday. Sometimes I will do a post, just to remind everybody that I do have a very strong pulse on what is happening in virtually every corner of the current world. Straight business first. Well, before I jump into the straight business, I will do my follow-up on the homemade beef stroganoff. It came out wonderful. And there was no recycles, obviously, this time. So, feeling good. I got to the end of the week and I have virtually no leftovers. So that is something that I personally strive for. Try to have zero waste in the home. That saves money. And, we try to truly, use the resources that we have, not only, smartly. We want to extend, the goods in which we have for as many purposes as we can, and it being Friday night, it's kind of up in the air. Fallback would be chicken tacos, which is a family fave, but we'll have to see, because I got some after school activities that are going to be taking place, which extends then dinner hour. We try to eat dinner between 5 and 6. That way there's enough time to digest, even have a treat before going to bed. So we'll see. Maybe we'll end up going out to eat tonight or tomorrow, or maybe not. I don't know, but we will see. So there's the domestic side of the house for the day. Moving on to more important business is Iran, the Shah Pahlavi. I hope I said that right. Pahlavi. I think your plan is sound. Your character appears steadfast, and your love, care, and concern for your people is apparent. So I do believe that we, and when I say we, I speak on behalf of not only America, Israel, but the general consensus of the world. I think we have our man to, at minimum, lead the charge into getting this tyrannical government booted out, because it is oppressive to the people. It is a huge and very expensive problem for every part of the world, and at its root it has no purpose other than hatred. I'm referring to the current regime in Iran, Ali Khamenei and his co-ops. They have brought nothing in the shape, form, or even resemblance of goodness into the earth plane, and has thus become a major stone around pious modern nations' necks. There is pent-up resources that can, should, and will be flowing to the rest of the world that is going to assist in getting the people of Iran a solid treasury going, and then being a part of being friends and allies with the United States, Europe, NATO as a whole, Israel. We collectively are going to assist you in rebuilding your infrastructure. Even if we're not going to be hands in, we're definitely considered the top 5% when it comes to intelligence, engineering, modern engineering. So I'm saying we can lend our consultation services all the way around it. And the United States is famous in some ways for our expertise on these things. PT has mentioned, the Panama Canal Project. America has led innovation since its beginning, and Israel has also led innovation since their beginning. And both America and Israel are more than for seeing Iran, the current regime, being ousted, and democracy, freedom, rule of law, order but most of all, safety for citizens. That's huge. No citizen should be treated like a toddler, especially by their government. In fact, America's having an opposite problem. We have American citizens that are acting like toddlers because they are so safe, and they are essentially allowed to do way more than almost any other people in the modern world. So I encourage my United States citizens, actually this part was for the United States citizens. I'm going to be jumping around. So a lot of these, you're not protesters, I'm talking about America for a moment, but a lot of these protesters are not protesters, as we've established. They're actually rioters. And that's the thing. If you're rioting, that means that you are essentially trying to overthrow a government. In Iran's case currently, that's what they need to do, because they are under a Hitler-style regime that is dead set on really causing chaos anywhere they can. I do refer back to 9/11. There were mothers, fathers, sons, and daughters that lost their life because of radical Islamic jihad. I am personally fine as Yahweh on earth. I am fine with any religion so long as it's peaceful. I am fine with any protest so long as it's legal and it is a peaceful assembly. I'm going to refer to Dr. King here shortly. Dr. Martin Luther King Day is on Monday, and in America, at least to me, it is something that is not only a milestone in American history and culture, but it is an amazing example of what faith and determination can do when it is done peacefully and the right way. Dr. King was an exception, and in those days it was a very big turning point when African Americans rallied behind Dr. King to establish true, fair, and equal rights for African Americans. And truly, behind the scenes, behind the veil, as Elohim, that was a cause that was well worth the effort, obviously. This is the land of the free, and it is the land of the free for all legal U.S. citizens. However, if you are an illegal inhabitant in America, then the land of the free is and will become so inhospitable to you that you will not want to come here. The only way in will be legally. Because if there are no programs that are going to support illegals in any way, then you're coming over here to walk around in circles, because there will be no jobs you can have. There will be no under-the-table jobs, because those individuals that are employing illegal immigrants are thus then breaking the law, and they too will end up in a court of law because of their naughties. So, for legal folks that want to come into America with proper paperwork and a purpose, we welcome you with open arms. We hope you fall into Americana culture, and we truly do hope that you are going to be one of those special few people that are going to assist us in a purpose that's going to help America, help yourself, help your family, help your communities. So those things are hugely important. And again, it has nothing to do with race, religion, has nothing to do with gender, male, female. There are only two genders, by the way. So again, that's what America wants. That's what America wants. And we're a very unique nation compared to any other nation in the world. So a lot of the current rioters, in my opinion, are actually just ignorant, and they have been misled. So I encourage these rioters or protesters in America to think. First question is thinking, and do you do it? Do you think? And if you do, what do you think about? What thought processes are you using? Identify external influences and internal influences, because most thoughts actually are not organic. They are a derivative of other people's thoughts, experiences, and conclusions. So first you want to be empty of these things and form truth based on facts. How does this apply currently? Let me turn this down just a hair. So how this applies currently is, so if somebody is not using independent thought and they're using bandwagon thought processes, so that means that, let's say person A voted for Tim Walz in the last election. That means that person has already formed a set of beliefs and ideals based upon their chosen person. So when that person says something or does something or makes proclamation to something, that person who voted for that person ends up having a sense of loyalty, faulty or not. They end up having a sense of loyalty to that person. Most politicians base their stumping or their speaking points heavily on loyalty. And I, as Elohim, I truly value loyalty above else. But that loyalty is all loyalty to me is going to direct you into righteousness. It is going to direct you into true, not only piousness, righteousness, safety, but upward mobility versus what are the motives of the potential influencers that rioters, protesters are following, right? So are you thinking with your own individual mindset, or are you thinking with Tim Walz's mindset? Or are you thinking with some of our bad actors right now that are just in the limelight? But that's really the question that I pose to these Americans. Because if you're rioting, you're trying to overthrow the United States government. Let's play that out. So let's just say you were successful and you overthrew the government. What's next? What are you wanting to institute? Are you wanting to open the borders and let millions of more people in without purposes? Millions of more people in that are going to weigh down the very systems that are supposed to help the bottom 10% of Americans? Because the more people we're allowing in illegally, the less help that gets to true Americans that need it. So if there is an American family that needs, $500 or $800 a month in food stamps, right? Maybe the father died, the mother is raising, kids on her own. She's not able to fill the gap, so the US government extends SNAP benefits to that person. But if that mother needs $800 a month to feed her children of 4, she may not get the full 800 because in her area there's 500,000 illegal immigrants that are getting the same benefits. So that single mother of 4 ends up getting about 20 to 25% of what she would have received, to ensure that the illegals are getting essentially a portion. So I ask you to critically think through the situation. Renee Good, if we were to paint the scene differently and we removed the fact that, let's take all the protesters away. Let's take the situation away for a minute, because again, protesters are not allowed to follow law enforcement officers. That's against the law. So that's what I mean is, when you are actively breaking the law, then law enforcement has not only their own sovereign rights to protect themselves, but to protect their brothers or sisters in arms in blue. But their number one responsibility is to protect legal citizens of the United States. That's the oath that they swear to on my Bible. And as their God, it is my responsibility to hold all people accountable. And that does mean rightly and justly. So, if we strip away the scene, and let's say that there was an officer in front of a car, and the officer is, making commands, making orders, the moment that car goes into drive, that would be the equivalent of a gun cocking or chambering a gun. That would be the equivalent. A vehicle, anything can be used as a deadly weapon, and just like the first action of harm comes when a gun is cocked, or a vehicle is put in drive. Those are the same thing. Those are 1-1. At that moment, it's very clear to physical behavior, and in the video, it's very clear of verbal behavior. They are not in any way peaceful. They're agitated. They are agitated. It is never a good idea to agitate law enforcement. Even as Elohim, as God, many, many, many years ago, 20 years ago, I was in an unfortunate circumstance, and I was in a college type of like sports bar in Tampa, and it actually got raided for underage drinking, and I wasn't underage. I was drinking, but I was not underage. In fact, I was a paid. I ran a poker league with the World Poker Tour. It was not for money, and it was in no way illegal. It was for free. So clubs, bars in the Tampa area would pay me usually about $250 for a night to bring my poker tables, my chips, and to host just fun poker games. Very much the same as like karaoke. Well, that night, unfortunately, was not the best night to host. But as I got paid as a vendor, it was my job, right, to be there. I was permitted to be there. Well, the police officers were coming in doing massive underage drinking busts, and later to find out there was cocaine trafficking happening in that club, which then they shut it down. Point I'm making, I had an interaction with a police officer. He demanded that, I get on the ground. I was trying to explain to him I have no problem complying, but I've got about $2,000 worth of equipment I need to get packed up and then get out to my car, so nothing was, broken, lost, damaged during this process. He did not allow me to say all that. Instead, I was pushed to the ground, my watch was broken, and then I went to jail along with 70 other people. Of course, it was a very bad experience, but at the end of the day, I was just wrapped up in something. Technically, I was permitted to be there. I did nothing wrong. But really, when I began to start kind of undressing my own situation, I still faulted myself, right? I really did have no business being at clubs. I really did have no business, I had a better path in life that I needed to pursue. My point is, right, ever since I stopped doing those things, I never had a bad interaction again. So guess what? I solved my own problem. And again, even then, I did not harshly charge the entire TPD. I simply stated my case, and I chalked it up to, hey, it was a bad experience. But likewise, where was I at? Who was I hanging out with? And, I'm hanging out with kids that were underage drinking in a club. I was hanging out in places I didn't realize that they were, cocaine trafficking, but at the same time, it was in an unsavory place. So that's being accountable, right? And then not wanting that bad experience again, keeping my own nose clean, right? Staying away from those things, because I don't want to be wrapped up in that again. That's what I encourage rioters, protesters currently in America to take into consideration. The federal law enforcement agents known as ICE, they are removing the 14.2 million illegal aliens that are not only weighing down our welfare system, but they're here without a purpose. And we do not need an infestation of lawbreakers. That's just a fact. So we need to get them out. And if they want to apply for citizenship, if they want to come back to America because they found purpose and what have you, then we will look at your paperwork and then we can go down that route. But truly, I encourage American constituents to truly think, and what your desire should be is you want to have pure, truthful thoughts that are going to provide healthy growth and thus influence the same for others. Because when I, as God, see hearts and minds, and most of what is in there isn't even that person, so then you're not actually unique. You're just a replica of someone else's beliefs and ideals. So that's a shame, because Americans should be unique in every way. You should have your own thought process. You should, be an individual that's developed, from within out, not being influenced from the outward in, right? So not injecting yourself in illegal activities just because it looks like it's common. Do you see? Just because it's common, or just because a lot of people are doing it, you're being influenced by those that are acting a certain way, and they're egging you on. It's very much kind of the flock mentality. And you have the liberal left mentality, right, that is spinning this narrative. Their constituents, their voters, legal or not, are rallying behind causes that actually are unfounded. They're unfounded. And instigating law enforcement to try to act or respond is an extremely dangerous game, and it is not one that should even be won by the lawbreaker, right? In this country, we have laws, and in this country, those things are important. And I, as your God, as your Elohim, I support the laws, because that's what ensures civilization can be prosperous. The safety for all people. That's a fact. And at no time do I, as Elohim, want any officer needing or desiring to discharge firearms because they're unsafe. They shouldn't be unsafe. This is America. This is not the back alleys of Mexico, which that hopefully will change. And I do appreciate, Trump talking with, gosh, I can't remember her name, but basically, the transition leader in Venezuela. I thought it was very sweet of her to give PT the Nobel Peace. I'm not quite sure if that's what you guys did based on what I said yesterday about I will give Trump the Nobel Peace Prize if he gets rid of Khomeini. If you get rid of Khomeini, then I guess PT, you'll end up with 2 Nobels. But I'm just saying, we're making progress in all these areas, but we're doing it the right way. We're doing it the right way. And the rioters in Iran need to be rioting because, again, they are truly under a Hitler type of regime. So the Iranians are trying to establish what America has currently. So there's a huge difference when it comes to, it isn't like as a lot of the left mainstream is trying to chalk it up. Because the left likes to omit details that lead to a false truth, a false narrative. That is super dangerous. And I do agree with this whole Netflix being political thing, because I have really stopped watching Netflix all the way around it. My stepdaughter may watch some things, but that's her business, right? As a young adult now. She's going to be going to college soon, so that's still up to her. But I do not really find anything that's really worth watching. I'm not even sure. I think the last thing I found worth watching might have been Downton Abbey. I did finish the Stranger Things, but that was it. Let's see here. Because I do have a lot of insurance stuff, which is where I was going to be mainly focused at today. But I did want to make, alright, I'm going to take a quick 5, try to reorganize a little bit. I feel like I'm under pressure with time today more so I'm a little scattered. Alright, let me take 5, reorganize, and then try and come back here and get this knocked out in the next half. Okay, we'll try and just trudge through it. So, finishing up on Iran. So, I do think that we can move forward for the next phase of Iranian freedom, and I think again, Shah Pahlavi is speaking. He's speaking the language of PT and myself, so I think that we are in a good spot there. Netanyahu, understand the delay, but I would also encourage, let's try to bag this, Forgive my language, but let's bag the bastard and let's get him out of there. There's good people that are anxious to get to work, to get water, to get food, to get a future. So time is of the essence. And as I said, I believe the international community is going to be more than supportive. I'm not in any way saying that we need to get American boots on the ground at all. Remember, this is Iran's baby to birth. But we need to equal the playing field. And that's just what we're going to do. So by removing the central figurehead of terror, that is going to create the vacuum, and then hopefully Shah Pahlavi can reestablish order and then begin instituting the plans for creating a constitutional democracy in some form or fashion. And I do believe that there is a place for the Shah to be a part of the government. As I said, much like the United Kingdom, they have separation of church and state. Also in America, technically, it's separation of church and state, which is also why I look at this as a two-party system, right? I, as Elohim, as God on earth, I work in my own lane, and then I try to help, assist, redirect the government side, but I do not tamper with free will either. So, but that's to that point, right? So when America is holding steadfast under one nation, under God, that is kind of my green light to continue imposing the will for the people, the will of America and Israel as a team, but also for the betterment of the entire world. But it's a fluid situation is what I mean. So I'm working on one side, and then it's kind of like I'm handing orders over across the veil here, and then that is what's moving the agenda forward. As you're seeing, like right now, President Trump is going over healthcare reform, which is seriously needed. I've covered that. But one of my talking points today is on insurance, but this one actually is something that has been prayed about, counseled about, and really what I'm seeing, this is pertaining to California, is the top of mind on this one, because the insurance situation, as I'm looking at it, California has long verified the property damage from the Palisades fire, or at least they should have already validated the property damage from the Palisades fire, meaning it is a justifiable claim and it is payable. It's a payable claim. Now, if Gavin Newsom and co. have adequately done what they are required to do, then the insurance carriers should have been paying claims 30 days after the fire. Or, I'm saying, right, they should have been paying claims as soon as they were able. So there's a hang-up. And virtually no claims have been paid yet. Okay? One of the two places the money is being held up is either by the state of California, Gavin and co., or it is the insurance carrier themselves. Now, insurance carriers, I worked in insurance for the better part of 10 years. Insurance carriers have what's called seeding insurance carriers. So ensuring the ability to pay, a seeding insurance carrier funds guaranteed claims. So it's like an insurance company that funds insurance companies. And that ensures that when the insurance company is writing policies, that they're not writing past solvency. So if, let's say, the property and casualty insurer in California, let's just say, just for a mathematical understanding, let's say they were able to write $100,000 in insurance. That's how much money they have to cover claims. But let's say they wrote $500,000 in policies. They don't have $500,000. So they either have to get a seeding company, meaning they join two insurance companies on the back end to then say, okay, now together we have $500,000. So then they're good to write policy. But this is also insurance fraud. This is taking down massive insurance companies that have written past their solvency, if that's the case, meaning that they're they're taking in premium, saying if your $200,000 home is destroyed, we're going to pay you the $200,000 to rebuild it. That's what you're paying a premium for, right? But these people in California have paid premiums, and yet they have still yet to receive their check to rebuild. So that either falls on the government of California for being very slow to act. And again, I encourage California to wake up, smell the roses, and become an independent thinking body, because the policies that California has are really only catering to the 1%, the Beverly Hills, bucket list. Like, that's not good for all of California. That's good for like the parts of California you see on TV. That's not real. That's what I mean. People can't form opinions based on reality TV. You can't form truth by fugazis. Like, it's really helpful if someone was to watch the making of Stranger Things, because when you watch the movie, it looks as if like everything is seamless, but then when you watch the making of it, you see in fact like it's all lights, it's glamour, it's makeup, it's all fugazi. That's what I mean. So many Americans are lacking and lackluster, right? Because we're seeing wicked and evil people on TV promoting their personal agenda and getting support. Meanwhile, the people that are supporting these agendas, they don't even know what the hell they're supporting, because if they had a normal mind, they would be like, I'm appalled at this, because it's harmful. So, again, insurance carriers should have been paying claims. Virtually no claims have been paid out. One of the two places the money is being held up, again, is the state of California or the insurance carriers. Ensuring ability to pay. Ceding insurance funds guarantee claims are paid, and the seller didn't write past their solvency. If an insurance carrier wrote policies past payable limits, then that is going to be an SEC investigation, Securities Exchange Commission investigation, and if the state of California is the holdup, then an investigation will be opened for that side. Because American citizens should not be at the mercy of big insurance. This comes back down to just a very simple matter of American citizens are paying for a product that they're not getting. And the insurance companies are still walking around scot-free, making thousands of percents of profit. But then yet they're paying out. Like, let's take a look very quickly. So right now, $134 million in 2024, $391 million in the past 3 years, and that's CEOs at the nation's 10. So you're telling me 10 insurance companies, just the top 10 insurance companies in America divided by 10, even if we did it equally, that means that CEOs of big insurance companies around America, on average, averaging it out, are making $13.4 million in insurance money. I mean, as their paycheck. So if we did one salary of these big guys, right, and then let's say the home is $500,000, that's 26,800 homes that one CEO's salary would have funded. So then my question comes back to, where is the money? And why are CEOs of any company making that much? Because I'm not saying that there needs to be caps, but I'm saying that there needs to be sanity. I have been in corporations a big part of my natural life here, and I can tell you that usually the higher up the food chain those guys go, especially in insurance, the less and less they're doing. And even then, right, if they were to just take a 50% reduction in salary, personally more than that, I think a CEO of any corporation, big, little, or small, really should be making $1 million or less. There's not a whole lot more that you need to do in this natural life to have more personal funds than you can manage, because really that's just pissing away money, or you're just recirculating it back through the 1%, right? You're using that money for private jets, you're using that money for, you know, 6-figure vacations, you're using that money for all manners and purposes that are not applicable to human kingdom, not my kingdom. You get what I mean? Even as God on earth, when the time comes that I hold $1 billion plus in treasury, I am never going to take that money and apply it to myself personally. In fact, I would have to respectively argue that my maximum cap on personal, like I would put my own cap on my own salary. And I mean, I could not foresee myself truly spending more than $250,000 a year for me, Asherah, the kids, personal home, cars, even vacations. And then my biggest investment would be obviously my home. And my home, you know, could also double as a temple. I'm saying I would be very multi-purposed in that regard. But that's what I mean. Even then, I would extend my personal resources to ensure that my flocks, you know, can gather and can come and for what it's worth, do religious activities on a holy ground. You know, I'm trying to say that we are having fraud somewhere. The people that are stroking the checks of $13 million for these CEOs, they, number one, like, they've never worked for that, they've never earned that, and because there's just no way, right? It would be the equivalent of saying, like, well, this person has $134 million or 134 million cars. What are you gonna do with that? Like, that's stupid, right? Like, even if you're a car collector, that's stupid. Like, you have way more than not only you need. Like, it's way past sensibility is what I'm trying to say. So why don't you get CEO salaries between 800 to 1.2 million at the high, and then your profits should be going to raises for your people, your employees the following year, and then everything you're making more, that should actually go to buy off a seeding insurance company, so then you as an insurance company can fulfill your responsibilities solely without needing. You see, insurance can be a blessing or it can be a curse, because it's a blessing when it is used the right way. When it's used the right way. But oftentimes, is what we're seeing right now, is it's not being used the right way. In fact, it's being abused, and the top 3%, they're making enough money personally that, like, hundreds of claims, thousands of claims. I mean, we just did the math, right? 26,500 homes essentially could have been refunded at $500,000. And let's look at it a little further. Let's do, where'd my calculator go? Oh, no, let's take a look here. Let's see. Wow. So we were just saying that out of one of those CEOs' salary in 2024, we concluded that 26,400 homes at $500,000 each would have been able to be paid for. Let me just make sure my math is right on that. So we're looking at, oh, dang it. Okay, well, the math, I may have gotten the math wrong. My point is, I'll do it this way. Yeah, so basically, you're at about $500 million in insurance claims being paid for. And that's not on one insurance company. I'm saying that's on a very wide variety of them. And you're telling me that the salaries of just the CEOs have almost reached that number. That's what I'm trying to say. So there is in no reality that these claims are taking that much time. It's because they're dragging their feet. They're trying to get out from under paying the claim. Meanwhile, the CEOs are just getting fat cat rich, and there's not even a reason for it, you see? And that is a hell of a thing when you're making that much money and you're in a service industry. Because if you're in technology or space industry, for example, that changes the dynamics a little bit, because you have a hard product you're selling, and if it takes $50 million for Musk to build a rocket, let's say, I don't know the exact figures, but just so you understand, if he's taking $50 million of his company's money, investing in research and development, or R&D, right, then he has to sell that rocket for a profit. Okay, so because of the people he paid, the R&D, the resources, the hard currency needed to do these things, then he sells a rocket to, say, NASA, right, for then $100 million. Well, the $50 million is used to expand more R&D. You see how that kind of rolls into each other. That's purpose funneling purpose. Service industries that are not selling anything hard, they're not selling an actual material like a spaceship, or even like Lockheed Martin selling or building weapons, water ironworks, building plants, building factories, reinvigorating infrastructure. Like, these are all hard. Like, even Trump, right? He's a land developer. He builds stuff. He's a builder, right? You give him money and say, I need a hotel. This is how I want the hotel. Trump then takes the work order, and then he does it under budget and delivers the product, and a part of the profit is rolled up into that. You see? That's the proper way. That's the proper way. An insurance company, what are you doing? You're literally just sleight of hand. We're transferring debt to this, to that, and then meanwhile, all the premiums we're collecting, they're drawing big time interest on. Like, these are fugazis. So we need to get that changed. Segueing into piggybacking on Trump. Oh gosh, maybe this weekend I'll get some sleep. That'd be nice. Piggybacking on Trump right now when it comes to healthcare. So healthcare is crazy expensive because this is where righteousness does come into play, right? Because if a doctor's office is in a doctor's mind, they're like, okay, I don't want to have to work very hard. I want 50 patients, and each patient is going to be worth X amount, right? Then the doctor essentially can, up the charge, and then continuing to send the bill to insurance. Meanwhile, the insurance, right, is under stipulation to continue to pay those bills, pay those charges. So what you get into is a bit of a war. The insurance company is then taking on the mindset that they're protecting themselves from overpaying medical practitioners. So where's the root? There's two. One, the root is we're not being efficient in our healthcare industry. The doctors, the hospitals are essentially, they're overpricing everything to ensure that they're getting enough. The insurance company sees that and goes, I'm going to continue to counter you. You say a Band-Aid's $50, I'm going to make sure it's only $25. And meanwhile, they're living in their own closed circuit realm of nonsense. And it's like, you people do realize the hard cost of medical is about 3% of the actual money being transacted in medical situations. So when it comes to healthcare, the free and open market should allow independent insurance carriers to sell policies essentially a la carte, right? If you're a young person, you should be able to have a catastrophic policy with a maintenance plan combined. I could not honestly see that being more than about $40 to $50 a month, because a young person's mainly healthy. They're not going to be medically needy. The services that they're going to be getting, which would be a physical once a year, a woman, should get a womanly checkup if they're sexually active, married. My point is, there are hard costs involved that a maintenance plan should cover at zero, like a zero copay maintenance plan, right? And then you have a catastrophic plan to go along with it that, me forbid, if anybody ends up in a medical situation, right? You got a poor diagnosis, you had an accident, whatever, then catastrophic coverage can kick in. And then I think that you should have a third component, essentially for the medically needy parts of society. But the difference is paying it on the after effect, not prepaying, right? The federal government should not be prepaying, giving money to insurance companies. Then the insurance company is still charging the person for premiums. I'm saying who is winning in this is the insurance company all day, every day. They've set it up that way. And that's what it is. It's a setup. And I hate to say this, but a lot of this all has spiraled out of control because the root is greed. The root is greed. And instead of changing their ways, insurance companies have just tried to bring more value into their policies, right? They're trying to dangle little treats in front of seniors. I worked in the senior market. So I worked with Medicare supplements, Medicare Advantage plans, and I worked on Affordable Care Act plans. I worked on short-term disability, long-term, life, whole insurance. I did everything. So I hold 216 license in insurance in Florida. So I'm pretty versed at these things, and that's why I don't do it anymore. It never set right with me, and even from being within the insurance industry, trying to change it from the inward out, all that really did was blackball me, because there's one thing an insurance carrier doesn't want to hear. The insurance company doesn't ever like hearing make less money and give more value. They never want to hear that. They want to hear make more money and essentially maintain the value that they're giving, because they got CEOs, right, that are making on average $13 million a year for doing nothing. They're being rewarded for legally circumventing righteousness. That's got to change, guys. There's no way we can do that. There's no way we can do that. And common sense pricing, right? I do get that we should have some very astute types of properties like the hills of California. I understand that a piece of property in the hills of California overlooking the Pacific is definitely not going to be the same price tag as an acre in the middle of Plains, Oklahoma. They're different in that regard. But extorting prices so high that you're barring the larger market, that's where it is catering to the elite. And when I say the elite, this comes down to, if that person is an elite, what purpose are they doing with their personal money? If I'm God on earth, and I am, I'm saying at the pinnacle of my ever income, I would be virtually perfectly fine with about $250,000, because that would give me personal money to do stuff that I want to do quietly and not in the public eye. But I want to contribute to certain charities. I want to be able to help certain families. I want to be able to do surprise home renovations. Oh, that's a high point. Asher and I would just watch the newest episode of I know I sound ridiculous, but I call it the Dave and Jenny Show. It's an HGTV home remodel show. One of the best episodes I've ever seen. They just did I think it was for St. Jude's Children's Cancer Hospital. Beautiful, beautiful renovation. The young girl Teal, she's currently undergoing cancer treatments. I, as her Elohim, am going to bless them and that family, so she can pull through it, because there's going to be a great, bright, beautiful purpose for that young lady, her brother, and her family. But what Dave and Jenny Mars have done, and that's another thing, Dave and Jenny Mars, I really have a soft spot for that team, for many reasons. One, they're being exemplary human beings. They are leading with their heart first, with their family, with my creation. I mean, they love animals as much as I do. I love it when that episode when Dave Mars bought his wife Jenny Mars a miniature cow. And I honestly thought that was just the cutest thing. And they've got all kinds of animals, and they take really good care of their animals. They're raising their family with all the good stuff that I love to see. Family inclusiveness. They're super tight. They're caring for animals. They're extending themselves to be a purpose and a service to their community. And likewise, the community, when you see in that episode of St. Jude, the firefighters coming together to solve a problem, like filling a pool. How cool. The firemen came to show up for one of their brothers. They helped fill the pool. And I mean, I couldn't even imagine. There was like 70 plus people working to do the 24-hour reno. And everyone is there to help one family who could use it. Like, what an amazing human experience. Like, that is something worth the books. And it does. It stems from Dave and Jenny Mars' heart. Their care, their love for not only their community, but that's their purpose. And when they're on purpose, I can see as their Elohim, they're working through problems, they're growing closer as husband and wife, they are getting closer and closer. Right? Imagine, unfortunately, if that situation was ruined, because of selfishness, or because of money, or because imagine if they were profit driven, that would have never happened. If they were profit driven, like a lot of these, true human miracles, human beings can do miracles to each other. You guys can be a saint, a guiding light. You guys can be someone else's miracle. How special is that? That is being in the image of me. That is being in the image of God. When you are a miracle to someone else, and you're truly doing it from your heart and not an expectation, you want to know how to change the world, I just told you. And all right, I'm gonna take a 5, regroup, and then we'll go into our last section here. Okay, we're back. So, yeah, and on some comments from Waltz, I'm getting sick of it, but it's amazing. I mean, as Elohim having to explain to grown men, old grown men, that, when you're looking at the source of chaos, it's the equivalent of, let's say, an officer pulled over somebody, and then now 50 cars have stopped, and they're rallying around the pulled over vehicle, and then they set the vehicle on fire because they're trying to say that the person wasn't going 40 over the speed limit. That person broke the law. The law enforcement officer is enforcing the law that is in existence in the United States. All those people that pulled over, they're protesting, they're burning vehicles, they're rioting, they're taunting, they're threatening, trying to run over, trying to hit with shovels, throwing rocks, throwing snow, lighting fireworks. That's chaos. I haven't seen one ICE agent light a firework, one ICE agent throw a rock, throw a snowball, haven't seen ICE agents set fire to cars, I haven't seen ICE agents throwing trash cans through windows, I haven't seen ICE agents virtually do anything. And the amount of mental, emotional, and even spiritual fortitude that those brave men and women are having to endure by the hands of a sick part of the population. And unfortunately, if you look at their voter ID card, with over 99%, they're all Democrats. They're all brainwashed by the Tim Waltzes of the world. And Tim Waltz, from me, Yahweh Elohim on earth, the Christ that exists in the United States under God, is me. And I am telling you that not only are you wrong, but you are inciting violence, you are inciting riots, and you are essentially disregarding the laws of our land so you can somehow rally support for your unjust and demonic causes. I don't support you. I denounce you, and I think that you need to remove yourself from these situations, and you need to be very thankful that a investigating attorney general hasn't come knocking on your door yet, because the Minnesota fraud thing is just beginning, and it wants it, and we're going to get to every state at that. I mean, we're going to be looking at everything, because guys, this is not President Trump's money. This is not my money. This is the American people's money that we're talking about being wasted, and it's being wasted by Democrats. And I don't even like to try to get political, because I'm not Republican nor am I Democrat. I'm just God. I don't even vote. But I can tell you, I can objectively look at every situation as Elohim, as the parent on the planet, and I can say, guys, this is the right way, this is the wrong way, right? If I come into my home and I see people spray painting crap on the house, that's not good. I'm not going to be happy. That's a naughty. You need to be punished for that. I don't care what your reasoning is. You're never justified breaking the law. That's a fact. And the fact of the matter is, right, stark differences between revolutions and riots, because revolutions and riots occur when there are dictators that are truly mass murdering protesters, because they're mismanaging money. They're mismanaging populations. They are not looking out for the safety and the best interests of the population. America is built and founded upon the people own the government. That's why America's so special. If the people own the government, that means that you have to be a shareholder in the government. Your United States citizenship is that share. That means if we're talking board meetings, everyone in that room that has a voice must be a shareholder, right? They're not going to let people that don't have any dog in the fight come into the board meeting and start demanding stuff. That's stupid. None of you would do that. Waltz, Kamala, Gavin, none of you would do that, right? None of you. Why do you think it would be different with the largest employer in the entire world, known as the United States government? I mean, I don't know if that's true. There might be like some Chinese organizations that like somehow have more in personnel. But I'm saying in general, like the United States government transacts the most money, has the most employees, and the Constitution is developed and designed because everyone in America is a shareholder, a legal citizen. So again, we want people to buy shares in America. I want people to immigrate over here legally so they have a say in voting. You know, that was what I was going to go into today for Martin Luther King Day. You know, talk about causes that are just, right? Causes that are right. And that's simply what did Martin Luther King. He had a reputation of peaceful protest, and they had a cause. They had a cause. Their cause was just. Their cause said, I live in the land of the free. Why am I not free? I was born in America. I've been born in, my family's been in America for 3-4 generations. Why can't I vote? Why can't I drink out of the same water fountain as this guy? Why can't I choose my seat on the bus? You see how those are just causes? Because there is a root of unjustness. And I'll go through the MLK story. So Martin Luther King Jr. was born January the 15th, 1929. And April the 4th of 1968, unfortunately, he was assassinated. He was an American civil rights activist and a Baptist minister who was the leader of the civil rights movement from 1955 until his assassination in 1968. He advanced civil rights for people of color in the United States through the use of nonviolent resistance and civil disobedience against Jim Crow laws and other forms of legalized discrimination, which most commonly affected African Americans. The church leader, Dr. Martin Luther King, participated in and led marches for the right to vote, desegregation, and labor rights. He oversaw the 1955 Montgomery bus boycott. He was the first president of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, leading the unsuccessful Albany movement in Albany, Georgia, and helping organize nonviolent protest in Birmingham, Alabama. Dr. Martin Luther King was one of the leaders of the 1963 March on Washington, where he delivered his I Have a Dream speech and helped organize 2 of the 3 Selma to Montgomery marches during the 65 Selma voting rights movement. And Um, the Civil Rights Movement achieved a pivotal legislative gain for Civil Rights Act of 64, the Voting Rights Act of 65, and the Fair Housing Act of 68. So, without going into, because it's actually a very good story, and then there is a, let's see, yeah, college, religious education, the situation when his grandmother had a heart attack, not because he was looking at a parade, but he always carried the guilt, thinking that he was a little deceptive, right? He kind of went away from his chores or his duties to go watch a parade, and in the meantime his grandmother had a heart attack, and then he thought that I took his grandmother because of his disobedience. Not the case, unfortunately. Well, not unfortunately, it's just a way of life, right? Everybody is called at a particular time, but the vehicle to how that is accomplished varies. So that's a nugget I would encourage my folks to kind of think on. Point is, Dr. King, Dr. King was peacefully protesting because he wanted to be heard. And he had a just reason to be heard. He had a valid reason to say, I'm being treated unfairly. I'm a United States citizen. I have a right to vote. I have a right to drink out of the same water fountain as this man. I have a right to sit on the bus anywhere I want. I should have, if I'm an American, I should have the same rights as someone who is an American. That's a just cause, right? And one nation, right, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Liberty, freedom, justice, meaning that liberty is given with the assumption that you are going to abide by the law. Then, if you abuse that and you step outside of the law, like spitting on federal agents, breaking windows, destruction of private property, you're no longer a citizen. Now you are a domestic terrorist. That's what I mean. Huge differences. So, in honor of Martin Luther King Day, America needs to take some history classes and truly stop calling it social studies, because you're not studying social events. You need to be studying history. And history is a good educator. And again, this only really boils down to, because every time I look at it, I go, where are the biggest issues that are strangling America? Most of them are democratic left liberal policies. Men and women's sports, Democrat. Minnesota fraud, Democrat. The shooter of Charlie Kirk, Democrat. The attempted assassination on Trump, Democrat. The destruction of billions of dollars and private businesses due to domestic terrorism, Democrats, right? Like, I'm just calling out the facts. So independent thinkers, you do what you will with those facts, but that's what I mean. Just objectively look at what we're talking about. Objectively look at what we're talking about, right? And it is either brainwashing at such a high degree that it will be known in history as truly a form of evil. The Democratic Party has earned its side in the Third Testament because simply they have developed, formed, and currently operate under a seditious form of evil. And I have no other excuse for them, but they either want to see the destruction of America, right? Or, like, I don't know what their end goal is. I mean, it could be just financial gain. I mean, these people are making literally 1,000% profits on stock trades. I mean, Warren Buffett himself doesn't even make that much. And that's his purpose, right? Warren Buffett's purpose is he is like an investment savant. I mean, there's no one else that can invest better than Warren Buffett than myself. I can't invest. It would be in a way like cheating. I can't do. That's what I mean. I can't even do. I could be one of the richest people in America independently if I wanted to. But because I am Elohim, I'm not. I would never do that. That's not fair. That's not fair to Warren Buffett, who is studying trends, who is doing all these things. He's putting in the sweat equity, right, for these returns, for this advice. I, as Elohim, can see the future easily. I could tell you what's about to skyrocket, what's a good boom, what's a penny stock to get tomorrow. I could take $100 and I could invest it, and I could start racking up some severe, like, big time return. And again, that's what I mean. If I wanted to play sleight of hand, I really could, right? Well, you all say I'm not Elohim anyway, right? So I'm just lucky. That'd be a lie. I can't lie. You insane? Are you insane? Like, no. It's never going to happen. I would rather tell an ugly truth than to tell a sweet lie. I would rather confess the truth and pay the consequences than to ever escape with a lie. That's a fact, right? And, I mean, I know right now with the Iranian movement, like, you guys, could pick up a good tagline from the Americans. Give me freedom or give me death. That was, let me make sure. I think that was actually chanted in the revolution. Let me see. Yeah, give me liberty. Patrick Henry. Gosh, why did I not know that? So the phrase, give me liberty or give me death, is attributed to Patrick Henry, who delivered this powerful statement during a speech at the Second Virginia Convention on March 23rd, 1775. In this speech, Henry argued for the necessity of raising a militia to defend American liberties against British oppression, emphasizing that the struggle for freedom was paramount. This quote has since become a rallying cry for those advocating for liberty and a resistance against tyranny. So, Iranians, that's where I think you are, right? You are at, please give me liberty or give me death. And I take it a step further. So, my churches, listen up. When you're on earth, it's like, give me heaven or nothing at all. How do I do that? I don't sin. How do I do that? I ensure that even if it's in a gray area, I need to go hard righteousness, right? I can't even toddle in the middle. I can't. I mean, I physically can't. I'm saying, like, in the first quarter of this coming, however you want to phrase that, my birth on earth, right? First part of it is I had to intimately know sin and get so close to it that I could breathe on it while still not sinning. That's hard to do. It's hard for humans to abstain from sin anyway. I'm saying I had to do that, and it was still hard, right? And then only after my investigation into people, places, things, and operations that I could kind of come out, take the mask off, and say, okay, I found all of our problems. Now we're going to get to work. Here's who I am. Let's rock. And that's kind of where we're at, right? So I'm saying I know sin, obviously, and I hate to say it. I've never seen that Dogma movie. It just caught my attention. It was it was a trailer that was on like the TV one night. We were looking for a show, and then I was like, wait a minute, what is that? I was like, it's got a goofy Jesus on it. Let me just see what it is. And I love that intro, right, where Matt Damon's like, I can spot a commandment breaker a mile away. And he asked the guy, he's like, are you married? And he's like, duh. He's like, to her? He's like, no. And he like pulls out a gun like, obviously a gun's a little extreme. But the overall point, like, that's me, right? Like, if I'm going anywhere, and then I have the added responsibility of knowing hearts, minds. I can see people's thoughts. I can see their intention. I can see their history. I can see their future. I can see a lot. And it can be difficult for myself as God interacting with general population, which is why I do stay reclusive and very, very tight to my family. And I am super protective over my wife and my children, because I tell them all the time, you have the hardest, you have next to me the hardest job in the world. You need to be the perfect family. You're not allowed to sin. They are not allowed to sin. And if they do, they have me there to speak to them about it, teach them about it, encourage them, and then I monitor it from afar to make sure they're making right decisions. So, as I explained to them, you know, their biblical legacy, you know, is going to be the righteous family, right? The actual family of God on earth, of me, Yahweh, and that's a fact. I want them to be not only exemplary in all the things in which they do, but they are model citizens in everything they do, and that's how we operate, right? And it does help the encouragement, at least for, like I said, the boys and Asherah, is, you know, they have witnessed heaven firsthand. So it's not like it's some fictitious thing to them or something that they are, you know, like it may or may not be true. Like they know unequivocally they've been there. Like they've actually been there is what I'm trying to say. So it's not like they're, you know, they're in a religion or they're in faith or they're following some like cult leader or anything, because I'm not, obviously, but I'm saying like they've had the full experience. And that's why I say they're troopers, right? They endure the stress along with me. And as a family, I get their opinions on things. Asherah's had a huge, big part of the Iranian freedom situation. She's had a big part in and very opinionated about Minnesota, because I ask her, like, I will sometimes look at something, well, most of the time, I'll look at something and I will have an emotional feeling, but I have to put that to the side for a minute. I speak with her, I counsel, I say, honey, we need to have a 30. Like, let's walk out in the back, look at the garden, and let's talk about this. This is what I'm feeling. And then I'll have her external opinion, and then I'll take that feedback. And sometimes I'm off the mark. Sometimes she's like, honey, I think you are wrathful when you should be more level-headed. And I'll take that, I'll internalize it, and I'll try to find her reasoning, and then I will go back to my reasoning, and then sometimes I have to sideline that, and I take it upstairs, and then at council Saturday, I'll have my huge list, and usually the beginning is, okay, like this is what I'm feeling on an emotional level about this person, place, or thing. Council, what is your wisdom? You know, and then I'll get the consensus of each one, and sometimes they're like, Yahweh, you're on the marker. We think that you're perfectly aligned with the situation. Say, okay. And sometimes they never really tell me I'm off, because I'm really never wrong in any way. I'm never wrong, but there are degrees in how I handle things that can be modified, and so I seek counsel for that. So a lot of times there are cases. That's the end of our counsel, is when I'm bringing forth cases. And if there are cases that have pathways attached to them, that's a bigger issue for me, because I'm like, this person is supposed to do something in the future, but now they've inquired of a sin. They have acquired a sin, which has branched off a pathway that's not the one that I need them to execute on. So then we counsel, how do I redirect this path back on the straight and narrow? And unfortunately, that purpose that person was supposed to do can sometimes be more important than what, how do I phrase this without like confusing people? Some people, for example, they fail to start, right? They started a life in sin because their parents were in sin, and then they've literally just led a sinful life that had nothing budding for purpose. So they don't have a path. They don't have any desire to have a relationship with me, their Elohim. They're kind of like a dud, right? They're that firework that didn't go off. So in a lot of cases, I just need to remove them, and then they're going to come back down, and it's like, okay, they did not grow from this type of soil. I'm going to have to take that soul and I'm going to have to put it in a different situation and try to grow it towards a purpose. And unfortunately, sometimes these people, they're not broken in that way. They're too selfish. Sometimes, a lot of times, they're just too selfish, because they're what we call recycles. They're recycles, right? Versus those that, right, they may be in sin, but yet they when I do a heart testing type of thing, they're not reluctant to righteousness. They just haven't had opportunities, or they don't know what it is yet, or they don't know how great something can be, right? So those people have potential paths that I'm like, okay, you're moldable clay, right? You're moldable at least. So then I can take my players on the shelf. Hopefully, I'm building that now, I feel. Those are my pastors, my teachers, my preachers. And those, you should be vessels for me as God to work through. And then you should have the confidence, if you and me as your God are so aligned, we're never going to have an issue. The issue happens is when the teacher, the preacher, the pastor, the priest is wanting to work their own will because they're like, well, this is the path that I see. This is what my heart wants. This is what I desire. You're not on my path. You're far away from my path. If you're open to correction, I'll try to bring you back to the path that I've made for you. And that path is going to intersect with me and my purposes, because then you become one of my players that I can say, you know what? I've got Bill Johnson here. Here, I'll give you a real-time one, right? Bill Johnson, he's 21 years old. He's a plumber. Basically left home at 16. He's not necessarily a bad guy, but he's in a lot of bad situations, right? He's a fun guy, but he does pursue women of the flesh. He doesn't have any exposure to righteousness because of the demographics he's in, where he's been raised, right? Kind of a country boy. Well, the point is, this guy is essentially useless at the path he's going. And I know that 3 miles down the road, I have a pastor, Pastor Jackson. Pastor Jackson of Hope Hill Church. Pastor Jackson is then going to be the nearest location to Bill. And so this is how this happens, but it happens on a very large scale as Elohim. But my angels also help me orchestrate these things. So I'm going to have something that is going to intersect. In this case, they're both about to have a bad day, but that day is actually going to change both of their lives for the better. And here's how. Bill was distracted. He picked up his phone on the seat of the truck. He didn't see that Pastor Jackson actually had to brake too soon to make sure he didn't hit a bicyclist. We saved the bicyclist, but Bill rammed the back of Pastor Jackson's car. Pastor Jackson gets out and goes, damn it, now I'm going to be late for service. So he's ruffled. Bill's going to be late for work. Now they're both having a bad day. They're both going, oh, Lord, right? Bill superficially, Pastor Jackson's like, God, where are you at in this? Like, I don't see any of the reason why this could have happened. Well, what ends up happening is they have dialogue. That dialogue alone is going to pique Bill's interest, because now Bill is actually going to meet someone who has went to Hope Hill Church, and then it's a girl that he wants to pursue. That's not the girl he's going to be with, but that's the girl that's going to get him into the door. He's going to recognize Pastor Jackson, and guess what? The next 25 years, Bill will be changed for the better, and then his path was back on my path, and I was successful in using Pastor Jackson to not only save a soul, but I was able to save the bicyclist. I gave Pastor Jackson I put him to work. And Bill, in the end of the day, he was saved, right? And then he's gonna persevere, and he's gonna do good. He's gonna find the woman of his dreams, and so on and so forth. Point is, there are pathways that exist for every man, woman, and child. If you want to avoid a rough life, if you want to avoid essentially bad things for no reason, you see what I mean? There's a difference. Bad things are going to happen no matter what, because that's just a part of the element of the game that humans can circumvent. That's what I mean. Like, that's an element that essentially is what you want to avoid. And even when you're walking perfect, right, sometimes they are unavoidable, because there are other bad actors that are in the creation that we're all sharing, and those bad actors' paths are not the right way, right? So everyone's supposed to be going this way, and the bad actors are going like this. And as they're bumbling around, they're crisscrossing through all the good paths. Well, that creates chaos. As Elohim, I got to go up there and start trimming all that chaos out. So the paths that I'm putting in are going to be cleaner, straighter, more thorough, and they're going to, like, permanent, righteous, good, like I'm saying, all things good, as I explained with the Bill and the Pastor Jackson, right? This is how I get things moving. And this is not like I have to sit here and think about every individual. I don't. Because if you know how computers work, they work on command, right? So if you're Control Alt F, right, it's going to filter all those things that you're typing. Control Alt F, you know, I don't know, soup bowl. Everything in that entire file that has the word soup bowl is going to be yellow. Everything I need to do with that soup bowl, I'm going to do this, right? I want soup bowl stacked, you know, 5 high indefinitely. Boom, execute. That happens. Boom. That's how I'm working, but I'm not using computers. I'm using myself. So that's another thing. When people are looking at me in any way, understand who I am and what my nature is. I don't proclaim to be God for any other reason, just because that is my purpose, that is my existence, and that is my being. I take my responsibilities as a creator in the cosmos, but as a heavenly father, literally, like, the power. It isn't for fun, it isn't for jokes, it isn't for mockery. It's truly to get people to understand, guys, there's a lot more to the world than you think, right? It's okay to have purpose. It's okay to be successful. It's okay to be beautiful. It's okay to work. It's okay to be a normal person. But don't short yourself when it comes to me, because you were born. That means you were given a soul. You were given life. That means you have specialness to you. And that means there are wonderful things that are set forth for you and your family. I ask, as your God, simply, don't sin it up. Don't go and sin it up. Don't get off the path. And if you do, don't come at me arrogantly. Don't come at me unrepentantly. Come at me contrite and say, Father, I know I'm not in the right path. I need help. You see what I mean? There's a difference between someone that is acknowledging they're wrong, acknowledging that they haven't been on my path, and that person comes their head low. They come into any church. Any church should never be hospitable to someone wanting to change. That's what I mean. That's the difference. But I feel like then the churches kind of took that and said, let's go chase around sinful people who don't want to change. Guys, never said that. You need to trust in me, God, and say, His will's going to be done no matter what. That's a fact. And that's what I mean. From the perspective of my religious figureheads, my pastors, teachers, preachers, rabbis, all of you guys should come at this. I'm going to make sure that I am righteous, I am clean. If I do that, Elohim is going to make sure that I'm on that right path one way or the other. Even if I've gotten off of it, I know that I need to get back on it by obeying the commandments, not pursuing things of the flesh, pursuing the purpose that God put in my heart and my soul, and knowing that paths are going to open up no matter what, no matter how it looks, the path is going to open up. But you must have trust. And don't at the last minute pull away off a different path because you're not trusting. You trust that path all the way into death. If it comes to that, and sometimes it might. That is true faith. Because for what everybody is dealing with in the earth domain, it is still cornflakes to me. Doesn't mean that it's not valuable. But what it means is, as Yahweh on earth, my spirit, my godship, my true kingship is literally able to do any and all things for righteousness, for goodness, for the betterment of humanity. And unfortunately, a part of my job comes with ending path. It comes with the other side of nuance that, again, I have to at times even make examples of people. And I'm just trying to say that rioting, that's so far off the path, right? And then by doing stuff like that, you are hurting good men and women in the process. and vice versa, right? By the world international community allowing Ali Khamenei to stay in power is him putting a big glass jar over millions of ants, saying he's God, and he's not. If he is, he's a false God. And then he's putting that jar over the ants, and he's saying, you're going to do my will. You're going to do what I want you to do, and if you don't, I'm going to kill you. That is what I mean. The Ali Khamenei, that mindset, that behavior, that characteristic, the entire situation is literally baked by demonic hands. Like, there is in no way that that is ever, like, in agreement with me. Alright, so it's already 12. I can't believe what time is going by. Alrighty, I think we're done for the day. Hope to see the Iranian situation start to blossom. That would be cool. Like to see that over the weekend. So have a good weekend. Have a safe weekend. And let's make the world great again. All right, guys.